think we have 3 people online. I'm not sure we're going to get quorum today. I know a couple people have let us know that they're not going to be able to make it. But let's take it away, Claudia.
Claudia Fugly, MNCCD.
Cheryl Schmidt, Metropolitan.
David Fenley, Chair.
Patty Thorson Trellis.
Eric Henderson, Minnesota Council on Disability.
Carrie Sheldon, Precinct G.
And let's go online. Sam, you want to kick us off online?
Jasmine, Precinct A.
Jeff?
Jeff Danes, Precinct D.
Patsy?
Patsy Murphy. I can't remember my number for my letter.
And then Diane.
Oh, precinct.
Oh,
Diane's muted.
did I already say Diane? Oh, well. We do have quorum. Fantastic. We have exactly 9 people.
Hey, I'm
All right. Thank you for introductions, everybody. I would entertain a motion to approve this month's agenda.
I'll make a movement.
So moved, Jeff Danes.
Thank you, Claudia. Jeff, did I hear a second from you?
Second.
Fantastic. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed, no?
I.
Aye.
Abstentions, fantastic, that passes. And I would also entertain a motion to approve September's meeting minutes.
Mr. Chair, before we do that.
Yes.
And this might
So
be a
moved.
first.
Yeah, go
It's
ahead.
moved, I guess. But
Eric, go ahead.
I was looking at the minutes, and I think on item 3, I don't know if it's actually complete. I know a lot of members had comments on that Blue Line street renovation, and it looks like there's kind of only 2 members that have comments there.
Okay.
I just wanted to bring that up. I don't know if we've ever questioned the minutes or anything like that before, but I know these minutes are something that go in our records for perpetuity of what we said, and, in 2 years, if someone comes and say, well, why didn't you comment on this or that, and it's not in the minutes.
Yeah.
Just wanted to mention that, so I don't know if the minutes got incomplete or how that works, but I just wanted to make that note for members for consideration.
I appreciate that. Do you recall what other members what needs to be put in?
Not the exact, I know there are other members other than Paulsen and Rodgers that
Okay.
discussed it. I know I had comments, and I think some other members had comments about the design specifically and whatnot.
Okay. Does anybody recall and want to put it in the minutes? Otherwise, I'm happy to table this and get it in the minutes if folks are okay with that.
Not trying to throw a wrench in things.
But you're not throwing a wrench in things, man. This is how
Yeah.
bureaucracy works. Do folks want to table until we get the proper comments in the minutes from last month?
Yes.
Is that okay? Sounds good?
Aye.
I'll work on that. I'll work on that. All right, so let's vote no, maybe? And then we'll just get the minutes corrected and put them back on the agenda for next month to approve. Sound good? If folks can vote their heart. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay,
Aye.
we're just about to approve the minutes and put them into the record, y'all, as the way they are.
Oh, so that's a motion to
Oh,
approve?
nay.
If you don't, well, we have a motion on the table, so we have to not approve it, and then we can bring it back next month corrected. If you want to approve it, you can. I know we've never done this before. This is the first time.
Jasmine, I vote not to approve.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
Aye. Fantastic. Okay, so the minutes, just so we're clear, we're not approving the minutes. We're gonna get a couple more comments in there that were made by people, and then next month they'll be on. Okay? So the minutes don't pass. Fantastic. Okay, and that's okay. That's how it's supposed to work. I didn't catch that. I appreciate that, Eric. All right, let's dive right into priority seating. Ange, welcome. Nice to have you back.
Thank you, Chair and committee members. If you missed it, I'm Ange Olsen. This is Alice Johnson. She's one of our project manager associates at Metro Transit, and she is going to be assisting me with this project and possibly handing it off to her. So I want to say thank you for all of your time because your input is extremely valuable. For this kind of a brief overview, let's see. There we go. So just as a note for the agenda, covering what was done in the past, what are other agencies and creative teams coming up with in their markets, and then brainstorming what your committee comes up with concepts for 2025 and beyond's campaign. Right now, we're in the process of updating, and it's actually, some of it's in market, and some of it is in the process of going out in market through the end of December, which was last year's campaign. With this, we kind of want to make sure, let's see here. There we go. So the objectives for this session, one moment here. This is a little wonky. I'm still learning how to use this. Objectives for the session is what does TAAC want all passengers to know about priority seating? Coming to a consensus of who should utilize priority seating. The reason why I added that is that in some markets, pregnant women and parents with small children classify as priority seating. And in past conversations I've had with this group years ago, that was not considered. And so by understanding what that means for this market, how we're going to identify that, is going to determine how we're going to present that to all consumers. Does that make sense? And then brainstorm some of the concepts that are out there. Bear with me here. I really know how to work this thing, honest. There we go. Currently, what's in the market now, as well as last year's campaign, we kind of overtook, we used a lot of imagery. We added some things here that were not part of the campaign because light rail changed over from cloth seats to plastic seats. We were able to use the accessibility icon and post that directly onto the priority seating seats. So it was more, how do I say, very precise that if you're sitting there and you don't need it, it's obvious. Does that make sense? Because we deal with people who don't necessarily, English is not their first language. They might not understand copy-heavy text who can sit there. But if we use imagery that is easily understood, more universal, we can get the point across. What some of the other markets are doing, this is an idea from some of the Metro Transit creative team. Refocusing from the imagery, showing people that they care and promoting respect. Get up. If you don't need that seat, maybe you should give it up. This is kind of a challenge in all markets. This is something that was done in Chicago, of all places. So they still focused on those things where they identified it, but we want to make sure, please offer your seat to those who have mobility needs. People can use their own assessments. Like, I don't really need this. I like sitting near the front, but I don't need it. Somebody else does, type of idea. Along with those, these were some other ones. Refocusing, as I mentioned before, we're not sure if people understand who priority seating is for, trying to make sure that it is understood. In some cases, it's spelled out, this is a priority seat, but we run into the same problem if people don't understand English as well as others do, then that becomes a barrier of sorts. Another idea I really like is putting on the floor of the buses. So that's just like a parking spot. It's designated. You see, as you're coming aboard, even if it's a crowded bus, you can sit there and look down and see the icon there. Another location here used just a black clang on the back, but still identifying what that means. In this case, on the black clang, it shows a mother with a small child, but we still need to kind of identify that. Right now, we can open it up to like questions, ideas, but first of all, how do you identify someone who needs to use priority seating? Who is that person or people?
Do folks have questions, comments at this time? That's a squishy question to answer.
It is, but it needs to be handled because if we're talking to people and educating them, we need to make sure that we're sharing the concepts from here. If half this group doesn't think that, for example, people who are pregnant shouldn't be inaccessible seating, then we shouldn't be marketing that.
I mean, I think it's an honor system. There's really no way to police it except socially. You know, if you want to,
Do we focus on the honor system?
I think, I don't.
David,
think
this is
that's-
Ken.
Go ahead, Ken.
Yeah, you know, you pose a great question. And coming from my ADA hat, it used to be that pregnant women fell out of kind of this disability bucket in the workplace. But with the advent of the Pregnancy Act and the Women's Act that are now part of legislation, there are specific responsibilities that we have as entities for people that are pregnant and or that have small children. So I think including those as part of those that should be prioritized to sit in those seats is an okay approach. Like David, I think this is something that has to be self-disclosed. Not every person with a disability, and you mentioned priority seating for people with mobility issues. I have a little broader perspective. I don't have mobility issues, but I have vision issues. I can't see. So I need to be included in that. And again, I think it's not every blind person has the same belief that I do. And they may want to go ahead and find a different seat. That's perfectly fine. It is a self-identifying issue. And how we teach people to respect other people's wishes or suggestions it is that age-old question. I don't know that there is a right way, but it seems like if we can focus on respect of other people, and if somebody appears to be struggling in some way, and it looks like they would benefit from having a seat up front in those priority seating sections, that we should happily give up our seat to do that, or even happily stand if need be. There used to be a time where if a man was sitting in a seat and a woman came in and had to stand, the man would give up his seat and offer it up to the woman. I don't see that as much anymore. But again, it gets back to this issue of respecting other people and what they may need. And if we could have that part of the education campaign, that would be the most ideal, I believe.
Thank you, Ken. I really appreciate your words.
If the members have comment, go ahead.
Yeah. I would also say hidden disabilities, it might not be just language. I mean, foreign language. It might be thought processing issues. Other people on the committee may have a better perspective on this. I know if I get on, well, I use a wheelchair, and so that's really obvious. Or if I walk, I have a brace, and that's really obvious. But there are other, if somebody's having somebody with a more relevant hidden disability, I know it might speak to it better, but I think it's good to, I like what's being said about respecting other, sort of the honor, self-honor, honors, respecting makes the most sense. Because it is hard to say, okay, I have processing issues, or I can't, whatever. People can see my arm or my leg or maybe or maybe not. But other committee members may have better ways to better articulate that.
I'm picking up what you're putting down, mainly in terms of invisible disabilities, we can't see it. So, I mean, Ken's spot on, and I also think, or I don't think I know, I mean, there are conditions that come along with pregnancy that limit mobility and could be considered a disability. Obviously, pregnancy in and of itself is not a disability, but it can have things that come along with it that would qualify to have someone be there. Calling people out is never a good idea. I think, if you're sitting in it and you think you need to get up, you should get up and let somebody sit there. That's pretty much the only option we have. I can't imagine any other region. Does any other region anywhere,
There are some that will actually
show me your
in the past, excuse me, in the past, it was asked that drivers enforce a lot of the, hey, you don't look like you belong there.
Right.
You need to get up. And unfortunately, drivers are very uncomfortable doing that themselves. So this is something that we have to educate all riders on about being respectful. And we're doing that right now with other campaigns of don't smoke on the train, don't hold the door open, all these other things. But we want to make sure that this is emphasized about priority seating, because it's more than just be kind or be respectful, that these are reserved seats.
Thank you. I like the image on the ground too. I mean, because a lot of times people on the train and the bus, they just stare at the floor. So they can stare at the international symbol of access for 20 minutes and feel guilty about taking a seat from someone else who might need it or not. Patty, did you have another comment?
Yeah, I will check after the meeting last week, I believe. I read something, and I can't remember the organization name, but it was not individual, Invisible Disabilities Week, and I can't remember. I'll find the name of the organization, because I had not been aware. I understand personally invisible disabilities, but I'll find that and send it to you, Dave.
Thank you. Claudia?
Your issue about the driver is true. I was on the bus last week, and I was on the bus. They were picking up a lady who was in a scooter, and she was having a really hard time getting up the ramp. And these two people were sitting in the accessible seats. And the driver looked at them like, move on, and they wouldn't do anything. And so finally the lady got up onto the bus, looked at the two guys, and they looked at her. They finally decided to move.
Yeah.
But then there were people in the background who were saying, well, if this lady can't take care of her scooter and can't drive her scooter right, she shouldn't be on a bus. And the driver was really nice, a lot of patience, didn't say anything, because we knew if we said anything, it would start an argument on that bus. But after she was getting ready to get off the bus, the driver apologized for the people in the background that was making that crappy noise. And so I really appreciate the drivers, but there's got to be something besides educating the society. What can drivers do that will not get them in trouble to say, can you move, please? We've got somebody in a mobility device or a walker that need that front seat, the accessible seat, without getting in trouble. They're afraid to tell people to move because of the arguments they have with society. And people are sitting in these accessible seats and they won't move. So there's got to be some kind of respect from passengers, and then also the availability of the driver to say, we have somebody coming up that needs the accessible seats. Can you please move? Without an argument. because they're afraid of the arguments that happen.
It's not just the arguments, they're afraid of being assaulted. That's one of the biggest issues right now. So we want to make sure that our drivers feel confident.
Exactly.
There is training undergoing about how to help. All new transit drivers are going through training, especially with the new buses, all the new BRT lines coming aboard, how to secure someone in a chair and things like that. That's a required training. But at the same time,
I'm Jasmine.
oh, I heard something.
Just 1 second, Sam.
Yep.
Go ahead and finish.
Yeah, let's let Ange finish her sentence. And
Yep,
then
I'm done. That's been the biggest concern that's been told to me by the people who train and operations, is that the drivers are genuinely concerned about being assaulted. And that's something that we all face every day. As we see somebody doing something they're not supposed to be doing on transit, you speak up, and you yourself can be a victim. So it happens to all of us. It's not just the drivers.
Thank you. Sam?
Yeah, so I apologize if this is already happening on the bus or trains, and I just don't realize it, but I remember a handful of years ago riding a tram in Vegas, and they had automatic announcements that would just go off every X amount of minutes, or 20 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever it is. But it occurred to me that maybe this would be a place where this would be helpful if you had some automated thing that went off every X amount of time that just did it, and the driver wasn't responsible for it. And it would say, remember, all passengers who need priority seating, please be willing to give up your seat for them. Yeah. Or whatever you would put in there. That would relieve the drivers of their responsibility of having to do it or blame. And, it might be a win-win. At
Thank
least
you.
it's something more than doing nothing.
Thank you, Sam.
Eric?
Thank you, Chair. I agree. I like the floor placard. I think that's another good cue. The image also shows, I think, another good cue, which is a separation of the seats itself as far as colors. It's another kind of cue to say that's, something to pay attention to.
With the seats, it's a little harder to do because of the way that the buses are designed. They come to us that way. It's easier for us to put a thing on the floor for us, but having different colored seats, it's a little bit harder.
Yep. Hard's good sometimes.
Fact.
I guess one of the things I'd say, I guess it's a question first for the group. Do people, when they're in priority seating that aren't supposed to be there, are they required to move? Is that like a must? Is it like one of those things by law, there's priority seating in these vehicles because it's mandated so, but, and I remember having this conversation, I think it was 4 or 5 years ago. Is it like an ADA stall in parking where you can't park there unless you have the badge for it? Is that similar to priority seating, or is it totally a different? What I'm getting at is when we have these messaging, the word messages, or even I think a really great comment by Sam about these reminders where it's not please or it's not about courtesy, but it's like framing it as a must. Priority seating. If someone needs it, you must move.
I'm undergoing my ADA advocacy certification currently. That's something I'm personally doing, so I can be a better representative of everything we do. From my understanding and my research, it is not a law for
So
this.
it
It's
is
strongly suggested to be a nice person to do this.
All right, fair enough. That tracks. And I think the training with the drivers, about trying to facilitate, the courtesy or the being courteous and moving is a good thing too. But maybe then that suggestion of must might not fly. But yeah, and the other thing is, didn't we? And do we still have a work or a task force for priority seating and the letter and all that stuff? Kind of.
Yeah, it hasn't met in a year at least, if not longer.
It might be a great opportunity for that task force, if we want to rekindle that, to reach out to your team as well, because that's something that we had drafted letters and had some ideas and stuff that there might be a repository information that we might be able to share with you
That would be
as well.
lovely.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know who chair who's,
I'd have to look back.
yeah, okay.
It's been a while, and
This could be that rekindling maybe with this type of presentation.
I know that certain members on this committee had wanted that to happen. That's one of the reasons why we brought you back. Ange, any other comments? Go ahead, Patty.
Following up kind of on what Sam was saying, I think I was in Oslo about 20 years ago, and I can remember riding public transit at that point and having those recordings. And it was really, it didn't present the confrontation level. So.
It didn't, I'm sorry, Sam Jasmine, I didn't understand what you said, Patty. It didn't what?
It didn't present, it following along on what you said, it wasn't confrontational. Just having the recordings, they were in the background. They sort of got to your subconscious.
You take the human out of the message, and
Yeah.
there's nobody to be mad at about
Yeah.
telling you to move because it's a machine.
Yeah, no face to.
Mr. Chair.
Eric.
Yeah, another good example was in Chicago. I was on the Blue Line and they had similar things, I mean, on the train or the subway or whatever. But I think, again, just reiterating and reinforcing that suggestion by Sam, I think is a really good idea.
Thoughts, comments, questions from committee members? Thank you. We'll get that work group fired back up.
Trying to pull up my contact information, which is on the final page, but it's, there we go. So if you need to get a hold of me, I guess I'll be the first order of contact. Once again, this is Alice Johnson as well, and we will be kind of regrouping next week regarding all of your comments. Between my notes and Alice's notes, we can start thinking about a plan. Any other last minute comments that you want to include?
I actually do have a question. What's kind of the implementation date? What's the due date? Like, you get all these comments for, hey, this is what we'd like to see with priority seating, or this is the way it's going. How does it kind of unfold? How do we actually see it in the field?
From our perspective, right now, we're doing the research for it. We know that we have to have a new campaign next year. The reason why it might be gifted to Alice moving forward is that I'm in charge of launching the Metro Micro, the Gold Line, the B Line, and the E Line next year, which is a lot. So in order to make sure that we do this right, we want to make sure that between Alice and I, we can actually get it done right. So your comments will be taken in. We're going to do some additional research. What can we do? What can't we do? Like, the announcements seem like an easy fix, because I know that we can do those. How often would they play? Once every 5 stops? We've already experienced once every stop with the no smoking campaign, and that was hated by customers, and we got complaints. So we have to manage what are all of our expectations versus what we can do. The floor cling, that's an easy done. It's easy to explain. We did the same thing like on the light rail trains, where it's the actual, with the plastic seats, we could put that icon on them and people understood that. I would love to be able to do that on the buses too, because that would be a simple fix that people see that and go, oh, I understand what that means, and then go sit someplace else. But because of the cloth seats, they're too easy to remove and things like that. So we just want to make sure that we're doing our due diligence.
One more suggestion maybe is looking at all the materials and handouts that Transit has. I think it was in September, or our last meeting, where we saw the pocketbooks for, schedules and things like that, having little notes in there, just kind of continually reinforcing, that courtesy drive. One more last question. What is the budget for this kind of project or rollout?
It's usually about 10K.
And that would include the stickers and
Well,
all
the stickers, if it becomes a thing that's accepted, like we can do it's called a pilot to test this, and becomes more permanent, then all of a sudden that becomes part of the bus manufacturing.
Okay.
So then it's not a cost. Like the clings on the trains right now, that's added to the cost to the build out of the trains. So now it's automatic.
So is this considered a pilot?
What we're going to do here is kind of a campaign with a pilot added.
Okay.
And to see the success rate. And then once that's done, then we we talk to purchasing as we add more buses to our fleet, that this would become more permanent.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I like the questions. Thank you.
That's actually really good to know. I didn't know that, Ange. Thank you.
Yeah, and so just to add is, we consider it, why don't we just replace those seats with the plastic ones on light rail? That becomes a bigger challenge than what it is. And so that might take longer. Our goal is to have a campaign that's new and fresh so that people see it. And then we can move forward with other ideas. There are we are testing different types of seats that are easier to clean on our buses, but we're not quite there yet.
Any final comments from committee members? Awesome. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. All right. Coordinated plan update. Anika and Bradley from MTS. Come on down. Welcome. Thank you for coming to chat with us.
Thank you, Chair.
Take it away.
Thank you. I'll introduce myself real quick while we're getting the presentation pulled up. My name is Bradley Bobbitt. I am a planner with Metropolitan Transportation Services Planning Office. We work on our long-range transportation policy plan, regional studies, and other regional plans like the one we're going to talk to you about today. I'm a senior planner. I've been around a little over a year and a half, so still fairly new. So any grace and patience is appreciated. And then I'll let Anika introduce herself.
Hi, my name is Anika Whittington, and I'm the transportation planning intern with MTS.
So Anika's been helping me to prepare this presentation, and then we're getting ready to go to, we're preparing a scope of work for this study to get ready to go to procurement for consultant services. So this plan is called the Coordinated Transportation Plan for short. The long name is the Human Services Transportation and Transit Coordinated Plan, which is quite a mouthful. But basically, the purpose of the plan is every 5 years we need to document how we're coordinating on these various types of transportation services, what our strategies are, and it's tied to our 5310 funding. 5310 is funding for transportation for people with disabilities, seniors. And so in addition to that, kind of making sure we have this plan in place so that we're able to distribute that funding within the region, we also have an opportunity then to take an inventory of what are our different human services, transportation services in the region, where are all our transit services, how are they all coordinating with each other, where are the gaps, and where do we have opportunities to improve that coordination. Particularly, we're looking at trying to address barriers either to people accessing transportation services or to system operations among our various transportation providers. And then another thing we do is we update our demographic analysis. So this study in particular, this plan focuses on people with disabilities, people with low incomes, people over the age of 65. One thing we're interested in doing this time around is expanding some of that demographic analysis, which Anika will talk about, to look at factors that contribute to a more general concept of transportation insecurity. Thank you, Kevin. All right, so as far as what we actually do, in previous years, we've largely worked with other transportation providers, so our transit service providers, human services transportation providers, and we create an inventory, like I said, of our services, where they're coordinating. This includes our public and our private and nonprofit entities. We're looking to analyze those mobility needs for these different populations, and then kind of catalog what are our barriers, what are our regional strategies, give updates on those for federal purposes, and then identify new strategies or changes to our previous strategies. And the reason we're presenting here to you all today is we're getting ready, as I said, to go to procurement next year for consultant services to complete this plan. And we found that we have a bit more budget for doing expanded engagement work or maybe some expanded analysis work. So we have some ideas, but we wanted to run them by you all. And then we just wanted to let you know that this plan we'll be working on it in the coming year and engaging you all and other committees within Met Council throughout that process. So before I hand it off to Anika, Anika will run through all the high-level tasks and the scope of work, and we have a few specific questions, but does anyone have any general questions before we move on?
Eric, yep.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just to kind of recap the scope of this and what this plan is, just so I can understand it. You're looking at a very holistic look at the transportation of humans and how all of these services, because you mentioned public and private, so
Yes.
does that include partnering with like rideshare companies, Ubers and that kind of stuff, looking at what Southwest Transit's doing, what Metro Transit's doing? Does that include working with MnDOT on their plans on how they're going to expand or how they're operating their road networks? I mean, is that the look at it and then trying to find gaps for users that use the system to help connect them and use the transportation system? Is that generally the goal and what you guys are trying to do?
Sure. Chair, member, thank you for the question. Yes, mostly. So it's focused on human services transportation, so that, and then transit. So yes to Southwest Transit and MnDOT to some extent, but maybe not so much like the roadway system itself, but more those transportation services. So think transit. I'd have to check with the project manager who ran this last time, who's actually still in our office here at MTS, on if they worked with rideshare companies, but you know, nonprofit service transportation services. I think like DART would be a good example. Services like that.
So like micro transit that's just getting off the ground, you'll be looking at that. Network Now, I think we had a presentation just on, and they're looking at kind of the same thing, rerouting different routes and figuring out where users are going, the effect of COVID, all this kind of stuff. Those are other entities that are a part of your work group?
Yes, we'll be leveraging that work as part of this work.
Okay.
With transit, I think it's more of a focus of how it interfaces with those, you know, whether it's Metro Mobility, Metro Move, microtransit, kind of those other less, the more fixed route services, how they interface with those non-fixed services.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And this is Ken, I've got a question.
Yes, Ken.
So as part of your public engagement, I understand you're including public and private networks. I would suggest, if it's not already on your list to engage, I would strongly urge you to consider adding to the public engagement piece is reaching out to specific service agencies that provide services, day services for people with significant disabilities. I'm talking about our day habilitation centers. We have many, many, many of those across the region. And it used to be that those individuals, I mean, we've gone through cycles. So those agencies have been partly responsible for providing their own transportation for their own participants, but they fall under the heading of Metro Mobility. And we have provided agency Metro Mobility transportation for many, many, many years. Now we've gone away from agency transportation under Metro Mobility and are using the network systems to service those individuals. What I've experienced with that change is it's been a very, very rocky rollout. And primarily it's because those day habilitation centers have not been a part of the conversation in sharing what the needs are of their participants. So much to the chagrin of agencies recently, when they encounter problems, the networks are telling agencies that they must change their business hours to accommodate transportation network systems to work more smoothly. And that's not an appropriate ask for an agency. Agencies have their own schedules of when they provide services. And most recently, those services, they only get paid when they're providing services to their clients. And they get paid on 15-minute increments today. It used to be a much wider span of when they get paid, but they're down to 15-minute increments. So if a participant, because of transportation issues, is late, maybe by a half hour, that agency loses 2 of those 15-minute segments. They don't get paid for that. And that affects their bottom line. So transportation is really an integral part of these service organizations. So I would just suggest that if it's not already on your list, to reach out to them and have them a part of the conversation so you can get the perspective of those organizations that provide services for people with significant disabilities that use these services.
Did you get all that, Bradley?
Yes.
Okay.
Well,
I think
an
his last
abridged
sentence
version.
really summed it up.
Yeah, thank you for that. I don't want to preempt Anika's portion where we'll talk about some of our ideas for expanding engagement, so I'll hand it off to her. And if there, but I did take down what you were saying to us in my notes.
Awesome.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you, Chair and members. Just to continue from where Bradley left off, I'm now going to just detail some of the higher level tasks that are developed for this project and how they differ from the previous project's updates. So currently the scope of work includes the review of Pure Region's coordinated plans, the recruitment of a steering committee, and the facilitation of stakeholder engagement efforts, an update of the regional transportation services and coordination inventory, an analysis of specific demographic factors within the metro area, and a review of populations and related planning efforts to address the needs of populations, as well as cataloging and developing strategies to address outstanding barriers, which then includes identifying lead agencies to assist with identifying those barriers and identifying coordination opportunities within those efforts as well. And then the final steps would include developing an implementation plan and final report. And just some notable differences that we want to highlight between the previous work and the current scope of work is more extensive stakeholder engagement through the expansion of the number of engagement processes and the incorporation of measures associated with transportation insecurity, as well as the identification of lead agencies for developing those planning strategies to combat existing barriers. And then finally, the development of the implementation plan to create more of a concrete means of addressing those needs. Okay, so firstly, within the review of coordinated plans created by the Met Council's Pure Regions, we will analyze trends among these agencies to observe how other entities fund, plan, and organize their transportation resources. And then the data gathered from these efforts will assist with identifying strategies for improving regions' transportation resources, especially within underserved communities. Next, we plan to recruit a steering committee with roughly 15 members from stakeholder groups such as human service transportation providers, transit operators, elected officials, county mobility managers, healthcare and social service providers, and community members. And so within the previous stakeholder engagement approach, that included an initial meeting for the steering committee members to be introduced to the project and identify those external stakeholders to invite to a one-day outreach workshop. Then there would be the facilitation of the outreach workshop itself to identify needs, gaps in resources, and strategies to address barriers within the transportation system. And then finally, there was a second steering committee meeting to evaluate the input gained from that workshop session and then plan measures to address the needs to reduce barriers to transportation. And so as I previously mentioned, there's increased capacity for more extensive stakeholder engagement. So in addition to the previous updates, outreach efforts, as described on the previous slide, we've also created an expanded engagement proposal, which includes increasing the number of workshops with stakeholders in different parts of the region. So that would be like facilitating the same workshop but in different locations. This would allow us to gain more input from individuals in more of those geographically diverse areas. And after strategies have been identified to address those existing barriers within the transportation system, we'd add an additional steering committee meeting to discuss the development of an implementation plan for those strategies. And we would also include opportunities for engagement with relevant Met Council and TAAC committees. And then finally, we would also be interested in holding some focus group sessions to more closely examine the issues faced by specific populations, such as community representatives, including those with disabilities, seniors, or low-income populations, or stakeholders representing specific groups such as transit providers, health or social service workers, and those human service transportation providers. So those focus groups would provide more of an opportunity to receive more specialized input from those groups and also examine issues that affect those populations on a deeper level.
So we have kind of interspersed throughout here discussion questions. So if that works for you to kind of discuss as we go along, we can also wait till the end if that works better. One thing I want to note that you probably are not seeing in here is a lot of like general public engagement. And the idea with plans like this is we're really going to try to leverage work through Network Now or other similar planning studies. A good example is the Transportation Needs in Daily Life study that MTS did last year, or earlier this year is when they completed it and presented on it. But to really use a lot of the general public engagement work that's already been done by Met Council and our partners, and using that to inform our stakeholder engagement. So with that in mind, the general question for the group is, are there other or additional approaches you think would be useful or appropriate here for stakeholder engagement, or do these expansions seem like they would be helpful or adequate?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Additional stakeholder engagement. I know you list seniors. We have an ARP member. I don't think he's present. I know he's talked about certain senior living communities where there's a gap. So if in general, I would say ARP would be one of those. They're not a transportation board or a committee or anything like that. So I know the word there is seniors, but that might be a group to reach out to as well.
Thank you, Eric. I think that's Richard you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, following up on that, talking with, I live in a senior living community, and I would say letting the, those that are running the senior living communities, specifically, I would say possibly executive directors, resident sales and outreach people that are trying to, I could be way off on this, but that are trying to generate new people to the community, to that housing option, that if the staff of senior living communities have a place where they can provide feedback, I think that would be very valuable. And the job responsibilities vary by senior living community, but the property managers of senior living communities and the executive directors could channel that if they could recruit people within their organization, that if the staff knows the service exists and the staff can provide feedback about what's not working. I don't know if I'm making any sense or not.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, Patty. Any other thoughts on engagement yet?
Yep, thank you, Chair.
Take it away.
I read the question fully. Additional stakeholder engagement approaches. Obviously look into the online resources as far as polls, maps that people can pin or do that kind of thing. A lot of this looks like in-person meetings and you might get a little more data points if it's a little more accessible as far as it's open for a certain amount of time, like most plans are for comment, but maybe something more focused on identifying the gaps and other things that the community that lives there could identify for you. That's it.
Awesome. Looks like no more comments. Anybody else? Perfect.
This is Diane. I'm online.
Yes, Diane, take it away. Go ahead.
Yeah, another good group to really make sure that you include in the conversation would be NewTracks. They are one of those transportation providers for people with significant disabilities, and what sets them apart is they have been utilizing their rolling stock in the middle of the day and contracting with senior communities as well as communities in general to do circulator routes, to expand some transportation options, and then their rolling stock is back available to take people from their work places back home in the afternoon. And they are also actually a TCAP of themselves. So and you probably already know them, Scott and Mike over at NewTracks.
That's a great suggestion, Diane. Thank you. Anybody else want to chime in before we have them continue? Go ahead.
I got one more thought. Potential another option would be to do ride-alongs. So you get on the actual transit, talk to riders or users and kind of say, hey, what do you wish, or are there gaps again? So just another engagement approach, potentially.
Great ideas.
Okay. Can you help me out here, Kevin? Can you help me advance the slide? Oh, sorry. There we go.
Okay, so then we will also include an updated inventory of the regional transit providers' transportation services and summarize within that the current service areas, provider information, including fleet maintenance and the number of operational vehicles. Also the days and hours of service, accessibility measures, sources of funding, and data pertaining to customers' utilization of these services. So the inventory will include an analysis of access to key destinations via transit, as well as an analysis of access to transit services themselves. And this portion of the project will also include the development of various maps illustrating service area coverage for the fixed route, dial-a-ride, Metro Mobility, Metro Move, and microtransit resources throughout the metro area. And so then within the demographic analysis portion of the project, current and future regional trends will be evaluated for older adults, individuals with disabilities, households with low income, and households without personal vehicles. So this data will be used to create maps similar to the one that's displayed on the slide there, illustrating the geographic distribution of these populations throughout the metro area. So if you look to the right-hand part of the screen, we've included an example of one of these maps from the previous Transportation Coordinated Plan update conducted in 2019. So this map shows a geographic distribution of the percentage of the population over 65 throughout the metro area, that's differentiated by the varying colors there. And then overall, this analysis will assist with examining interactions between demographic factors and transportation access. So we'll also incorporate a narrative within this section that details how these demographic factors overlap and can lead to an increased susceptibility of experiencing transportation insecurity within these populations.
So just to cover a bit more about the concept of transportation insecurity, which I think on its face is pretty self-explanatory, but it's something that there's been quite a bit of work done around the country on in recent years, is developing it as a concept. The top information here or definition comes from USDOT, which is transportation insecurity occurs when people are unable to get where they need to go to meet their daily needs regularly, reliably, and safely, which is a pretty broad definition, but I think encapsulates it pretty well. And it is a bit broader, which is why we're talking about trying to incorporate this beyond some of the demographic factors we've analyzed in the past, whether that's zero vehicle households or other factors like that. Because someone could have, they could live in a house with one car, but they don't have access to it that day. So they have to figure something else out. Their car itself could be unreliable. These are just examples. I'm sorry they all involve cars, but anyhow, the University of Michigan has been doing quite a bit of work to develop a validated survey instrument for measuring transportation insecurity, kind of getting at some of those softer, maybe less discrete forms of transportation insecurity. But through their work, they found 1 in 4 U.S. adults experience some level of transportation insecurity. Our plan is to incorporate some of the findings from the Transportation Needs and Daily Life Survey study that I mentioned earlier, and any other work we can find in the region from our partners. I do know that our research team is looking to incorporate some of these measures of transportation insecurity in future travel behavior inventory and other survey instruments, but we don't have that right now. So that's why we're looking at incorporating more of a narrative and trying to bring some kind of human element to the plan to talk about this concept for this update. But our question for you all is, does this seem like a good direction to go with this? This is going maybe a little bit beyond the federal requirements in terms of documenting all our strategies so that we can, keep receiving our 5310 funding. This is maybe going a bit further.
At any time we're doing more than is minimally required, I think is a good thing. Anybody else have comments? Yeah, Eric, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just could you clarify how transportation and security would be implemented if it was implemented to this plan? Because would it be a look at individuals who have, as you mentioned through some of your examples, maybe like their personal vehicles or personal transportation methods aren't regular, reliable, or safe? Or would it be implementing this transportation and security ethos from the perspective of incorporating the transit isn't regular, reliable, or people feel it isn't safe for improvement in the plan?
Sure.
Because those, I think, are two different angles to come at it with this concept. So I guess just clarifying what angle would this come into the plan and be incorporated?
Sure, Chair, Member, thank you for the question. I think the intent we have for this plan is to kind of introduce the concept so it could be maybe more fully incorporated into our strategies in a future update, since we don't have data specifically on transportation and security right now, but we'll hopefully get more of it through our future surveys and updates to like the transportation behavior inventory. We do have some pieces of that measure, right? Whether that's looking at populations with low incomes, so populations with disability, zero vehicle households. So we have some of the kind of rudiments, but not in a straight measurement of where in our region are there concentrations of people experiencing transportation insecurity. So as far as for this plan, it'd be more introducing the concept and kind of laying the groundwork to use it as a more specific measure that we'd build strategies around. But since we have some of this work already through like the Transportation Needs and Daily Life project, we wanted to incorporate it so that it was there and we could start introducing it as a concept to be used later on, basically.
When you're doing your outreach and your meetings and stuff like that, if you're going to implement traffic and security, it'd be a good talking point so you can at least start collecting that data with some of the people you're talking to and stuff like that to implement it. And I think it would be interesting to kind of twist it a little bit and take some of these criteria and apply it to the transit systems that you're evaluating as well. Do people feel, because we hear a lot, some people don't feel safe on certain transit routes or certain transit itself. They don't feel it's reliable or regular. So using that metric as a way to also identify needs within the system, I think would be an interesting way to use that. Because I think the way it's explained is more about individual transportation rather than in a transit system. So that could be a novel way to approach it too.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Eric. That was good stuff. Any of us have comments before we move on? All right,
Anyone online?
continue. Is anybody online want to chime in? I just usually wait for them to
Oh, sure.
pipe up. We can continue.
Oh, you want me to, was I taking the rest of these? Okay. All right. Going back to the individual tasks, we'll have the consultant review related planning work, previous planning work, so that's previous updates to this plan, but also some of these projects that I've been mentioning in our conversation already. As you can see, the transportation needs and daily life studies mentioned there as far as incorporating relevant findings from other work that's been completed recently in the region. Summarizing our current strategies for addressing barriers and their current implementation status. So we're going to update, what's changed in some of these strategies that we've been implementing in the region, what progress have we made or not made, and then summarizing and incorporating that public input from related efforts like Network Now, Network Next, et cetera. And of course, that would also include any planning work from other transit agencies. I'm mentioning Metro Transit work, but MVTA, Southwest Transit, any information they can give us, we'll also be sure to use. Next task would be developing strategies for addressing needs. So again, we'll have our existing strategies from the previous plan, and we'll go through those to make sure they're all still relevant, and then potentially looking at developing additional and proposing additional strategies that we'd run through the steering committee for this project. And we'd like to try identifying lead agencies for the various strategies. That's something that wasn't in the previous plan. We identified a bunch of different strategies and maybe the barrier that they were looking to address. But what we're hoping to do is set up a kind of something where we can nudge in a direction of like, these are the folks who are in charge of working on this, or the agencies that should be coordinating, not necessarily, committing them to something in particular, but stating in the plan, these are the folks who are responsible for these strategies or coordination. And then the final task would be developing an implementation plan and final report. So again, at a very high level, we'd want to have some sort of statement of, here's the rough timeline until the next plan update that we're going to try implementing XYZ strategy. And again, who would be the main responsible agencies for doing that. Our final report will have all the various strategies and supplemental materials, and it will go through public review, and it will need to meet requirements from the state and federal government so that we can continue receiving our 5310 funding. As far as an overall timeline, we're shooting to go to procurement beginning of next year, with the project starting early summer, maybe a little earlier, and then it will take about a year to complete.
Thank you both. Anybody have any last comments or questions? Yes, Eric?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Does this include bikes and active transportation as well? There are certain, you can rent bikes in Minneapolis, or just bikers in general?
I don't think so. Thank you for the question, Chair, member. The previous plan, it really is focused on those human services, transportation services, and transit and how they coordinate. I don't remember seeing a lot of mention of bikes in the previous plan. In biking, I think it doesn't really fall under that same umbrella.
How about like scooters?
It would be a similar answer, yeah. Yeah, that's more of like a micro-mobility type thing. But
just for my own what's considered a barrier?
I mean, a barrier could be that, say, you can't physically access transit based on where you live. There is no transit service where you live. It could be setting up rides, or if for like a dial-a-ride service, if there's some sort of language barrier or a technological barrier. I mean, it's a pretty broad definition, I think, that they've used in the past.
Yeah, usually when we're talking about access barriers, it's usually like the realm of ADA, or you don't have the ramps. Or you
Sure, and that absolutely, yeah.
That's included in there. I think you kind of answered, but who's going to use this plan? You can't necessarily require a private agency to leverage or, implement certain things that are found. So I'm curious, like, what's the end game for getting this off the ground and it actually getting implemented with these partner agencies and other stakeholders that could be impacted by what we want to do at this point?
Yeah. Thank you for the question again. Yeah. So, I mean, the main purpose, right, is to make sure that we have the plan in place so that we and our partners can continue receiving that 5310 funding, the funding for transportation services for people with disabilities and seniors. So that's the main purpose. As far as when we were talking about, having some sort of high-level work plan, identifying lead agencies, I think is more to lay to the groundwork for that sort of coordination and not necessarily to hold people responsible in some sort of hard, fast way to implementing something. It's more to that kind of soft, coordination approach.
I think, you brought it full circle with the funding as well and ensuring that we have it and having the plans in place, so that tracks. Thank you.
Anybody online? Final thoughts, questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We appreciate your input.
All right, on to reports. I'm gonna put myself to the top of the list for reports real quickly, then we'll come back to the subcommittees. On Monday, you all, I think, got an email from Kevin inviting you to, a week from today, there is a Blue Line extension tour. James is in the audience right there. Do you want to give us a little bit more details on that? And tell us why we need to be there. We've heard a lot about the Blue Line over the years, and
my first time here, and I appreciate the invite, appreciate the time. I'll be brief. Again, representing the Blue Line Extension Project, I work for the Community Affairs Department in Metro Transit. I see one of my public involvement colleagues over here, Mr. Cook, appreciate it. But as many of you may or may not know, we are, over 30% in the design phase of the Blue Line extension. And moving pretty quickly. And as we're sort of in a phase after we had our municipal consent about a month and a half ago, all the cities gave the municipal consent approval, which was an achievement, a milestone for us. And now we are moving toward advanced design, where we're doing all the legwork consistent with the environmental process and what our responsibilities are to the federal government, to each of those 16 categories of environmental review, where we have to identify impacts and then come up with mitigation for each one of those. So now we're doing some of the advanced field work related to that, and then we hope to publish that final EIS sometime early next year. Move on to the right-of-way process and continue to advance design to the point at the end of next year where we hope at some point to begin moving toward putting a contract together and continuing the process to put that out for bid. So it's moving pretty quickly. Things are going fairly well. But as we're going along, I'm here primarily on behalf of Nikongo Segola, who's our public involvement manager, who I think who couldn't come today, so I'm here on his behalf too, but I know he's been very engaged with TAAC, and we'd like to just reiterate that commitment to continue to be engaged and continue to get your input as we go. So in these somewhat early stages of design, we were hoping for that engagement to involve a tour and to give an invite for just a tour where we would take interested members along the alignment, the Blue Line extension alignment, so you can kind of get a visual of what that will look like. And we would have, some of our design people on board, outreach engagement people on board, and others, just be able to answer questions you might have at this stage, because again, it's something we want to continue to do throughout the design stage. This is the best time to do it. So we wanted to extend that. I also say that I wear two hats. So I also been working for the Green Line extension for many years, 9 years, and we are heading toward revenue operation, I'm happy to say. in 2027, and reiterate the same sentiments there. I know we're very much wanting to continue to stay engaged. So what we're suggesting is a Blue Line tour for sure, and we can tailor make that to whatever you're interested in. But if that might include just maybe a visitation on this tour with some Green Line sites, we're happy to do that too. You know, you can see kind of what construction is looking like there, maybe some of the finished products that we have. I don't know if you're aware that we're over 80% done with all of construction on the Green Line extension. And so if, you know, there's a lot more to do, but from sort of a layperson's point of view, or if you were to walk and observe the alignment in the western side where it would go from roughly St. Louis Park down to Eden Prairie, you know, it would look kind of done. We've got the catenary poles up, right? If you have downtown here in the Green Line, you can see the wiring, the messenger and contact wiring is in. We've got signal houses in. So that kind of looks finished, although there's still things to be done, clearly, in the next 2 years. But if that's of interest to you, we'd be more than happy to drive and see just the contrast. Start with the abstract. This is the Blue Line. This is where the alignment's going to go. There's just not a lot to look at. We'll just be able to answer questions. But then we can show you a little bit, too, what the Green Line would look like, and whether that's one tour or 2 tours. I know the Green Line would probably like to have its own tour, and we have had internal discussions to engage you, in 2025 about having a more thorough tour of the Green Line that you might be of interest to you. So we can just keep this to the Blue Line and maybe add to that maybe just a quick run through the Minneapolis section of our Green Line if you'd like to see something like that now, as opposed to waiting for some more thorough tour in 2025. So that's the invite. And so I've just kind of brought a sign-up sheet here. We basically have reserved 2 Metro Mobility buses. So we'll have enough room for at least 6 people who have mobility devices. And then I think, Claudia mentioned, we can get up to, 4 to 6 additional people on there. Now we'll have 2 staff on each bus as well to provide, answer questions, provide information. So I imagine if we could say at least 4 folks who don't have those mobility device needs and 3 people who do, that would be 7 on each bus, so a total of 14. And again, we can always increase that. We could always get a van if we needed additional help, but we're going to stay right now with the 2 buses. So, and then we have 2 options. Right now, 9 to noon or 11:30 to 1:30, and I'll leave that internally for you guys to decide. We kind of decided we'd do it on kind of a democratic way. You can choose which one you like, and then we'll see where the majority falls, given this is the election season. And just finally, the date that we have reserved for those buses is November 13. So we've got a little less than a week to get this all together. So that's kind of the basic invite, the basic pitch. Again, I think the most important thing we want you to hear is that we want to continue to be engaged. We want to continue to get your input as we go along, especially now they're in design phase. So that's all I've got.
Thank you, James. I think that's a really great opportunity. Go ahead, Claudia.
Where would the people be if they are interested?
Where will they meet?
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Claudia, for that question. We haven't determined that yet, but it's something we're certainly open to. I mean, in the past, depending where we've picked up the buses, we could have a preordained meeting location, closer downtown, and then go from there. Or we could all meet in one location independently. I think we're open to whatever works best for members. Yeah. So if you guys could also give that some thought, let us know. I've been in contact, as you know, with Kevin, or with Doug, we could continue to talk.
Ken, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks, James. I am the rep from TAAC to the CAC. And I wanted to, I think there's a limitation on the number of people that can be accommodated, but I wanted to just make sure that an idea is considered that CAC members on the Blue Line extension are also invited to participate in this tour. I think it's certainly helpful for a lot of people to get a lay of the land visually. I will not be participating. It's not going to be helpful for me as I can't see. So it'll just be like riding a bus for me with no visual component. So I will defer to people that do the tour to get their feedback to bring that forward. But I think if it's possible to invite members of CAC to join the tour.
Yeah, no, Ken, I appreciate that. And again, I don't want to make it seem like we have any limitations on our tours. I know, having worked on the Green Line for as long as I have, we are open to anybody and everybody who wants to have a tour. Something we try to communicate out to the public, frequently. If you have a small group, no matter how the size of the group, we could do a smaller van. But I think we would certainly like to do that. If you think there's interest in the CAC, whether it's participating in this tour or we have a number of people who would also like to participate in an additional tour, we're more than happy to do that. Yep, appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you.
And it's nice to meet you. I've heard your name quite a bit from the Congo, so.
And Ken, I'm sure there'll be discussion in the bus the entire time. You always bring a good perspective, so I don't necessarily think you have to be able to see the horizon zooming by to contribute.
Yeah, and to be fair, because I've been a part of the discussion for the alignment for quite a while, many years, I understand intellectually the route and the areas that it's going through. But I really do, I take your comment very seriously, Dave. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Doug.
Yes, Doug Cook. Just want to put forward that we probably should lock this down this week.
Okay.
So if you're here, I would say, sign up.
I will leave this.
And then if you're not, if you're online, probably emailing David, or do you want them to email you directly?
I think email me, directly. Put your CC Doug, CC yourself, whoever else you think needs to be on there. But I agree. Thank you for that, Doug. I think by when would you think? Tuesday?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, we have the buses, so it's just a matter of getting names and then. Do we have any suggestions here, picking up on Claudia's point about where the best route to picking people up would be? I mean, I don't have a lot of familiarity with that. So. Any thoughts on that?
I mean, I would probably say here would be easiest. I don't know. There's probably closer places, but in terms of familiarity, and we have 14 people, it might just be best to do here, unless you have a different suggestion, something that's closer by.
I don't have any suggestion. I don't know, Doug, do you think? I mean, have you?
I mean, it depends who signs up, I suppose. I mean, if you're living on the other side of the cities, at Target Field might be good, right on the Blue Line there, or somewhere along the line.
All right. So would that be something that we could also work out in the next few days?
Yeah.
All right.
Or Haywood, is that?
Or even meeting over at Target Field where it might start. I think it starts at Target Field,
right.
wouldn't it?
That's it. That's where it goes from, extension.
Y'all are smarter than me. I like that idea. Cool. Folks, is there interest from folks online? If you want to chime in now, we can get your name on the sheet. So you don't have to bother emailing. And if not, we'll get you the email. I think it went out Monday, so you probably should have it in your email address, in your email inbox. Not a lot of, I'll be there.
I'm Jasmine, I apologize. I'm not able to attend, so.
Okay, that's fine, Sam. I appreciate it.
And I'm considering.
Ken's considering?
Ken, you should go. Down, yeah. Is James on the email, on that email that we sent out?
I don't think so.
Yeah, because I'm gone until Tuesday, so
Okay.
I can be a good communicator.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, just put me on there.
We'll resend the email and we'll CC you, James, okay?
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, throw Nikongo on there if he's not on there already too. That would be good.
Who else?
Nikongo Sigolo, he's our
Okay.
outreach manager.
I do know him. He's been here a few times.
Yep. That would be great. All right, so I will leave this here. I'll send it over to Claudia's way, and you guys can fill that out. And again, you could either just send me this, a photocopy of this. We don't say photocopies anymore. I guess a scanned version of this.
Picture.
Showing my age here. Yeah, or whatever form you want to just send the list of names. Okay, so again, I'm thinking, for at least 14, we'll cap it at 14, and then, or 6 people who have mobility device requirements. So if we do that.
And what's the best way to get in contact with CAC, the CAG? That might be a question more for Ken.
Nikongo.
Okay.
Yep.
Perfect.
Yep.
Easy
Could that be right, Ken? Just with a question like this?
That would be correct.
All right, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right.
That Xeroxed and back to you.
All right. What do they used to call those things with the pages and the blue? You know what I mean? You had to press hard, and you had
They
to
smell really bad.
Yeah, smell really bad.
That was just before my time.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. You don't look that old. All right. Well, thank you very much, Chair and members. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
I hope James did not steal your thunder, Ken. Do you want to give a Blue Line update?
Sure. And we do have a Citizen Advisory Committee TAAC meeting tonight, so I will be attending tonight. We are actually doing something a little different tonight. We're doing a workshop style work where we're breaking up into small groups to do some individualized brainstorming. And again, our focus is still on mitigating displacement issues. I'm chomping at the bit. I want to get to station design and that finite detail of alignment, and we're not there yet. So I'm just chomping at the bit. But displacement ideas and brainstorming for different displacement issues that have come up along the line is a major issue. And if we do this work correctly, we can mitigate a lot of the negative impact that displacement may have. And there's going to be displacement on this alignment. There's no doubt about that. But as I've seen on other light rail lines that we've done in the past, we are usually pretty good at addressing, minimizing the displacement efforts. Can we make everyone happy that's going to be displaced? No. But can we go a long way to eliminate the complete negative aspect that displacement might cause? Is absolutely. And that's what we're going to try to do our very best tonight. So that's the latest. And yeah.
Thank you, Ken. I don't see Chris for Green Line online, and Darrell is out today as well. We did the bus seating priority stuff already. Any members of the public who would like to make a comment? All right. Any members who would like to make a comment?
Just the
This is
form-
Ken.
Oh, go ahead, Ken. I just had a.
Oh, I'm sorry. Didn't mean to step on you there.
It's okay. That's what we have when we do hybrid meetings. It's great though. Ken, you go first, and then we'll go to Eric.
Okay, all right. I wanted to mention one thing related to Metro Mobility, and it's the Metro Mobility same-day services, premium same-day services on demand. It has been a very long time since I encountered any major denial issues because of my service dog on Transportation Plus, on the Transportation Plus program, the taxi program. But I encountered a denial 2 weeks ago out of the blue. And, you know, a denial for a ride, that's just blatant discrimination. Because of the service dog, that, you know, not somebody, the driver not wanting a service dog in his cab. We haven't had that problem in a very long time. But I also serve as the Advocacy and Legislative Affairs Chair for American Council of the Blind of Minnesota. And it just so happens that at our last meeting, several members identified they had similar denial issues on the cab in the recent last 2 weeks. So all of a sudden, this is rearing its ugly head. And it has highlighted some issues. So we have always been told that if we encounter a problem in the Metro Mobility premium same-day program, we are to report that to Metro Mobility Service Center. And they are supposedly to keep track of that. And then they pass on our complaint to the cab company so the cab company can deal with it appropriately. Then it gets tracked, it gets tracked by Metro Mobility, and there's some follow-up, and Metro Mobility has some muscle to be able to do something if it doesn't get resolved. In both cases of other blind people experiencing problems, they called the Metro Self-Service Center and were told, that's not our program. We're not taking any information about complaints related to the cab, even though it's the Metro Mobility premium same-day program. They refused to take any information and referred the caller to call the cab company. So that's problem number one. So we need some clarification as to what is the proper sequence that needs to happen when there's a denial that takes place. The second thing is, I had a conversation with the owner of Transportation Plus just this morning, because I've reached out to him to try to have a conversation about dealing with this new trend of denials that are starting to happen again. And I know we have, you know, cab drivers, there's a high turnover rate, and we have new people coming on that might not understand our nation's approach to service animals and the laws related to ADA. We experienced that many years ago. We dealt with that by providing them with extra education, and the problem sort of went away. We encounter it every once in a while, and it's kind of, we expect that, but that's why these these systems are set up so we can report them and keep track of any trends that are happening and try to get on top of it so people are not denied a ride. Having conversation with the owner of Transportation Plus, he informed me that there's the contract ends at the end of December. So at the end of this year, the contract ends and they've reapplied for a continuation. But as part of that, if Transportation Plus gets selected again, I have made sure that this issue is on the docket to be addressed within that contract renewal period, so that we can put something in place that really establishes a better monitoring process when we do experience issues. One of the things we talked about this morning was I identified that, okay, 2 weeks ago, I had my ride denial, and the driver got out of the cab and said, I'm Muslim, I don't have to take your dog. And we've dealt with that before. We've had that conversation before with drivers, with imams from the synagogues, and we got that all cleared up years ago. For it to be popping up again, it needs to be addressed again. So I talked with the owner about implementing some new educational programs and maybe even having the video of the imams, which are the leaders in various synagogues, to address this issue again on a video so that that can be rolled out to drivers one-on-one anytime they need a renewal of the process. So we're working on a different solution, but I get back to the fact that I don't have information. I got a text message saying my ride was confirmed and driver Joe has picked up the order and he is in town taxi 763. But as soon as my ride gets collects me, as soon as my ride arrives, that text message goes away and I don't have access to the information. So when I call to complain, I don't have any documentation to identify who the driver was that I'm complaining about. So we talked about this, and there is a way that the system can turn on email confirmations so that when you get a confirmation, you get an email instead of a text message that identifies the driver, the cab number, the date, the time, all that valuable information to your inbox. So if you do have a problem, you have a way to identify the specific driver and we can deal with the problems one-on-one when they crop up. So I guess my point is I want to raise the issue that we need to identify the service center's role in complaints and make sure that the service center representatives know what their role is, because they don't right now. And unless that process has changed and nobody's told us, we are with the understanding that complaints need to go to Metro Mobility Service Center first, and Metro Mobility Service Center will identify the problem, track it, and then send it to the cab company from Metro Mobility. And if that process has changed, we need to know about that. So that's my
thank you.
My sharing.
Thank you, Ken. And just 1 second, Sam. This is timely. I think so next month we are getting an update from Metro Mobility. I'll make sure that this is part of that. But I think in the meantime, we can address it kind of behind the scenes. But Sam, did you have a member update as well?
I just wanted to comment with Ken because as like Ken, I haven't had a problem for a long time either. But this does seem to be cropping up and did crop up on Metro Mobility recently with me and turned into a really rough, very confrontational thing. So without going into it all, but Ken, I just want to remind you, you probably remember when we used to, if this happened, we pressed charges with the cab companies. I was one of the early ones that actually did that and was successful with it. But the other thing I wanted to remind you of is that we used to have a committee, and you and I were both on that met with the cab company, the owner, and it might be beneficial to like have that kind of ongoing and meet maybe even just like twice a year or something, just to fill out any problems or smooth out anything that could be better, and anything else, just to kind of keep in touch and have them remember our faces and see our faces and whatnot.
Right, and that was part of my conversation with Steve Pint this morning, was that we are going to be regathering in January, early January, to start those committee meetings again together, just so we can talk about issues that are being experienced and kind of try to head them off at the path. So we are going to re-engage that starting in January.
Please count me in on that.
I will, Sam. Thank you. And one other thing you should know is, the American Council of the Blind of Minnesota is a statewide organization of blind folks. And I've been hearing from our members that they're experiencing more of these denial issues with their service dogs. This is not new to Minnesota. This is happening all across the nation. And because it has been happening all across the nation, you know, the Department of Justice oversees ADA complaints. And the Department of Justice has recently identified that they don't think this is a significant enough issue that it warrants their attention, but they agreed to have this period of time that they are collecting data. And the American Council of the Blind, the national organization, is collecting data when blind people with service dogs are denied rides. They're collecting that data, compiling it, and providing it to the Department of Justice. And when it reaches a threshold, the Department of Justice is going to go after network transportation services that are denying our civil rights and providing discrimination. So that is happening on a national level. So, you know, and again, I think this just identifies that this issue is a persistent issue that crops up here and there, but it's cropping up more and more, especially with Lyft and Uber, which is a whole different story. But just so you're aware, this is going on, and we're back in touch with Transportation Plus, and we are going to reinstitute our committee to kind of look at this and figure out how we can solve this problem.
Thank you, Ken.
I would encourage you to, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, Sam. You're good.
Can I just say one? Ken, I would encourage you to, one of the things that I have found that's extremely frustrating is, pardon me, people bitch, but they do nothing. So
Right.
You will hear complaints, and I hear a lot of complaints, but they won't pick up pick up and do what they need to do. And it's not enough. It's really not enough. And they're complaining that you can complain all you want, but if you're not going to do anything, you and I both know how this works.
Right, right. And you know, to address that, I've just been named as the Advocacy and Legislative Affairs Committee Chair for the American Council of the Blind of Minnesota. And my committee and I, what we are doing with ACBM is we're setting up a web page on American Council of the Blind of Minnesota's website. So when people encounter problems, they can fill out a real short form to identify they have a problem. And one of the members of our committee will reach out to them, gather the details, and walk them through the steps they need to follow to file complaints and where they need to file them. Because we really feel like many of our members are older and they just don't have the same experience in knowing how to advocate for their own rights.
Right.
So we're hoping that this kind of hand-holding them through the process will teach them the process they need to follow in order to advocate for their own needs, kind of as a mentor type program. And I'm hoping that this will have some impact so that we can step back eventually and people will understand what they need to do when they experience a problem. And I agree with you that that is an ongoing issue. People love to bitch about being denied a ride, but then don't do anything about it. And you know, and quite frankly, I've been in that situation where I've had a problem and I am redder and hotter than hot, and I want to just blow up the world because this is an outrage. But I'm in the middle of going someplace, getting to an appointment or a meeting, and then when you get back, that's the last thing on your mind is wanting to reintegrate this problem and spend time digging into it again. And so you just drop it. And that doesn't solve anything. So again, hopefully by teaching our members what to do and how to do it, we can engage them in their own kind of skill building.
Thank you, Ken. I'm actually really sorry to hear that this has cropped back up again. I think we're going to have to, revisit training and incorporate maybe the training and even more stringent rules into new contracts because you're right, premium same day is up for renewal, I think next month or next year.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think the transportation companies know full well that if this persists, there will be a lawsuit because it's happened in the past.
Yeah, and both Uber and Lyft have been sued.
Yeah.
And because of those suits, they have agreed for settlements. And part of the settlement is Uber and Lyft both have 800 numbers that people that are denied rides because of service animal issues have an 800 number they can call and get immediate human help to lodge their complaint, get the details identified, and an investigation started. That's part of the settlement with the Department of Justice that Uber and Lyft have undergone. But sometimes the cab companies kind of skirt this issue and are treated a little bit differently. So I think we're trying to get on top of it now and provide a system that allows people to let the cab company know this is an issue, this is a problem, and if it persists, we are going to file legal, we're going to take legal action.
May I add one thing?
If you want to add something, you can, yes.
Going back to PSD, premium same day, if you can give us a call at the service center, and if you want to just speak to me directly, my name is Cheryl. I will go ahead and whatever the issue is with PSD service, I'll go ahead and type it up, and then I have an email address that I can email them, and then I will get a response usually within a day or two. And then if you want us to follow back up with you, you would just give us your phone number, we'll follow back up with you, and then let you know what they said. So that's one way that we can track it. I'll go ahead and mention to staff on Friday at our Friday staff meeting that you're not, that a couple of times that you called in and you weren't able to successfully input a complaint. However, we are always told too that you can always email the cab company yourself. However, if you're not able to do that, we can do that. But lately I've been the one that's been in contact with T Plus, or customer care at tplustaxi.com. And so I've been in contact with them and then, working with them, and they try to tell me about, certain issues and things like that and certain things that come up, and we try to at least get an answer from them. But I think it's very important when the contract comes up in December that that's definitely addressed, because lots of answers that I do get from them are very vague and, not real helpful to clients. But, they have been answering some questions for me, so.
Yeah, and Cheryl, just as a quick follow-up, when we send emails to that same email address, we hear nothing. It's crickets. So for us, it feels like it just goes into a black hole. We don't know if it was received. We don't know if it's been thrown in the trash, if something's happened, if they've taken action. We have no feedback loop with that. That's why I have always stressed it's really important to let the service center know, because they're the ones that can track it and have direct data collection to be able to provide. You have more power than we do as individuals. And so I would just urge that whenever there is a complaint received, that you have as part of your process a follow-up to let the complainant know that it's been received and what the result is. Even if there's no action, that's better hearing back than not hearing anything at all.
Absolutely.
Jasmine.
Yes, go ahead, Sam.
I just wanted to, I agree that it is really nice to hear back, even if it hasn't been resolved. But I just want to say I have had to report a couple things to Cheryl in the last month or month and a half, and I just want to say Cheryl has been very responsive to me. So good on you for that position, Cheryl. And that really is important, that we do get feedback. I cannot emphasize that enough.
Do any other members have comments? Awesome, we can adjourn 15 minutes early. Thank you all for joining us today.
Thank you.